Hello and a very warm welcome to Middle East Matters. I'm Sanam Shantier. Coming up on our programme this week, the painful legacy of the Iran-Iraq war still lingers 4 decades on. We bring you a report from the survivors of a chemical attack on the Iranian town of Sardasht. A look at the regional benefits of the UAE-Israel normalization agreement, which has been dubbed a blow to Palestine's struggle. Both countries are now bracing for an influx of tourists. Also coming up on our show this week, Lebanon, a country embroiled in political and economic crises. Today it's women's health that could be at risk. Now we start with a conflict which is considered one of the deadliest in modern history. 40 years ago, Iraq's President Saddam Hussein invaded Iran, launching a war that raged for 8 years. The late Iraqi dictator also unleashed chemical weapons on Iran. Today, the survivors of those poison gas attacks still struggle with mental and physical health problems. However, the residents of the Iranian town of Sardasht have not given up their fight for international recognition of the horrific massacre.
همین حالا که می‌بینی هم ریم هم ششم یه فشاری میاره شبا واقعا خواب نداریم.
The date is engraved in Mohammed's memory. On the 28th of June 1987, Iraqi planes dropped mustard bombs on the city of Sardasht in Iran. At the time, Rasul was a farmer. His lungs were so damaged in the attack, he now breathes with the help of this machine. The attack on Sardasht took place 7 years into the Iran-Iraq war. On the 22nd of September 1980, Saddam Hussein invaded Iran over a territorial dispute. Baghdad claimed sovereignty over the Shat al-Arab, the waterway which forms the boundary between the two countries. But there was more to the conflict than land. The Iraqi dictator was threatened by the new Islamic Republic, a modern conflict reflecting a centuries-old schism between Sunnis and Shia. But what was supposed to be a blitzkrieg for Iraq developed into a protracted quagmire. Faced with stronger than expected resistance from Iran, Iraq resorted to chemical weapons against its military and the civilian population. According to official figures, 119 people died in the attack and more than 1,500 were injured. For the survivors, the injuries have had lifelong consequences.
خشکی چشم دارن، آبریزش چشم دارن، قرمزی چشم، قرمزی پوست، خارش پوست، بعد تغییر شکل پوست، یعنی پوستشون حالت چروکیده پیدا میکنه، بعد تنگی نفس.
33 years on, and the residents of Sardasht feel the international community has forgotten them. Only one man has been tried for the war crime. In 2005, a Dutch arms dealer received a 17-year sentence for selling chemical weapons to Saddam Hussein. But the Iraqi dictator was executed before he could face justice for his role in the attack.
Staying with Iran, the country has been hit with a new wave of US sanctions over its disputed nuclear activities. Among those targeted, 27 individuals and entities connected to Tehran's nuclear and ballistic missile programs. The latest measures come despite objections from nearly all members of the UN Security Council, including European countries. Observers say Donald Trump's maximum pressure campaign is killing the possibility of another nuclear deal or a détente with the Islamic Republic. Let's take a listen to Mike Pompeo announcing those punitive measures.
Today, I will take the first action under this new executive order by sanctioning the Iranian Ministry of Defense and Armed Forces Logistics and Iran's Defense Industries Organization and its director. We're also sanctioning the previous president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, For nearly 2 years, corrupt officials in Tehran have worked with the illegitimate regime in Venezuela to flout the UN arms embargo. Our actions today are a warning that should be heard worldwide.
In other regional news, thousands of Israelis were back on the streets over the weekend. This despite a new nationwide lockdown to curb the spread of COVID-19. Many protesters wore masks but did not distance themselves from each other. The crowds were calling for the removal of the country's prime minister from office, who's been formally indicted on corruption, fraud and bribery charges. Benjamin Netanyahu has also been heavily criticized for his mishandling of the economy amid the coronavirus crisis. To Lebanon, which on Sunday recorded a record number of new COVID cases on Sunday. The crisis-ridden country is now considering new lockdown measures, raising fears of a deeper economic collapse. The country's growing inflation means that many impoverished and middle-class women can no longer afford to pay gynecologist fees. Experts warn that long-term consequences may include high rates of breast cancer and other deadly infections.
For 7 years now, Nadine El-Qassis has been working at a charity clinic in this impoverished neighborhood not far away from Beirut. This Lebanese gynecologist used to see mainly Syrian refugee patients who have no health insurance and could not afford going to regular clinics. But since the harsh economic crisis hit Lebanon last year, things have changed.
A rising number of Lebanese women come to seek treatment in this clinic. We expect to see even more of them with the worsening economic crisis.
Nadine El-Qassis is now seeing her patients less often than she should.
Donc c'est seulement la deuxième écho qu'on fait pendant cette grossesse. Sorry.
Today, many women miss regular gynecological examinations and other important procedures. This woman is 8 months pregnant. She should have already had an injection to prevent an immunity-related disease.
ليش ما عملتيها كرمال الكلفة؟
أكيد حالي تعبان.
بس إنه هيدا شيء أساسي، إيه إنه إذا البيبي طلع عنده تشوه. هيك أنا رح أطلب لك إياها لأنه لازم تعمليها للإبرة.
هو لازم الواحد لازم تسوي حالي.
شوفي أرخص وحدة، أنا رح أكتب لك اسم، إذا اسأليهم قد إيه البديل إذا في أرخص، أوكي؟
At this hospital in Beirut, Nadine El-Qassis says many middle-class women no longer undergo regular examinations. Today, 34-year-old Ren is visiting the clinic for the first time in a year.
I can no longer afford to pay the visits, fees and the medication. The prices of many drugs are now more expensive and some are even out of stock.
Okay. في وجع شيء؟ خدي نفس عميق. On a peur que cette baisse de fréquentation ou
We fear that this drop in the frequency of examinations or delayed appointments will have an impact on the diagnosis of breast cancer. We know that late checkups will lead to more cases of advanced breast cancer.
peut augmenter
In 2 or 3 years' time, we will start to witness the consequences.
les conséquences.
According to the World Health Organization, breast cancer is the cause of more than a quarter of cancer-related deaths among Lebanese women. Lack of early diagnosis would make a bad situation even worse.
Last week, Israel and the UAE signed a normalization agreement on the south lawn of the White House. The two countries, however, have had a relationship for decades now, albeit a covert one. The Palestinians, for their part, have called the accord a stab in the back. Now, several sectors across the region are set to benefit from this pact. They include tourism. Soon, Israeli tourists will be able to descend on luxury hotels and beach resorts in Dubai.
From her home on Israel's coast, Melanie Atlan organises trips to another coastline in the United Arab Emirates.
We look at the hotels we offer our clients. People want to be the first. They can't wait to say they were the first in Dubai. That interests them a lot. Since they announced the peace deal, they keep calling me to find out when they can actually travel. It makes me dream all that. I already want to be there. I can't wait to be in Dubai.
Her business partner's already there. He bet on normalisation a year ago, creating an Israeli travel agency specialising in stays in the Emirates.
I'm feeling excellent in Dubai. Everyone are here excited from this peace agreement. Everyone, are saying to us, Israelis, you are most welcome here. And they want to implement the peace on the ground,
Bye.
They have 3 groups of 25 waiting to fly to Dubai. But while Israel's pioneer tourists are excited, in the West Bank, Palestinians are bitter. They feel rejected by the Arab world.
We felt sad, and we felt the unfortunate of that we're struggling to achieve our own state with the support of the Arab communities, whom always been with us. They have the right to consider their interest, but I think it's much let's say, more comprehensive if they look and consider the Palestinian nation who's been struggling in this struggle and have a lot of people who've spent their lives trying to defend our rights.
The refrain here is, we are Israel's neighbours. First of all, they have to make peace with us.
Well, that's it from Middle East Matters this week. Thank you so much for watching. Do stay tuned.